Good afternoon and good morning for participants from Uganda. Welcome to the first NDA Knowledge Exchange hosted by the Fiscal Policy Agency, Ministry of Finance of the Republic of Indonesia as the NDA for Indonesia and supported by Global Green Growth Institute or GGGI as the delivery partner of Readiness Program. My name is Mariska Nirwan from GGI Indonesia and I will be the MC for our event today. It is a pleasure to virtually meet you all amidst the ongoing pandemic to share and exchange practices that hopefully could strengthen the administration and the implementation of GCF programs in our countries. I would also like to inform you that this event is recorded, so please let us know if you have any concerns or other consents. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, today's knowledge exchange among NDAs of GCF is organized as part of the NDA capacity strengthening activity to implement GCF mechanisms in their respective countries. As countries have varying degrees of progress in accessing GCF, conducting a knowledge exchange among NDAs will enable a cross-learning and potentially adoption of best practices and solutions based on countries' experiences. Moreover, we hope that this session can establish a network of NDAs that allows for transfer of knowledge and peer-to-peer consultation, as well as collaborations in the future. Today, we have the pleasure to welcome representatives of NDAs and direct access entities from the Republic of Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, Mongolian People's Republic, and the Republic of Uganda. Thank you for being here with us. Before we begin, allow me to briefly share our agenda for today. The event will be opened by NDA Indonesia as the host, followed by keynote remarks on strengthening country ownership through knowledge exchange from the director of GCF's country programming division. And we will have two panel sessions. In the first session, we will discuss about the experiences and lessons learned in nominating and accreditation process of national entities from NDA of Papua New Guinea and representative from GGGI Uganda as delivery partner of GCF Readiness Program in Uganda. The second session will discuss the experiences and lessons learned in developing direct access project pipelines by colleagues from NDA of Mongolia and Indonesia. Throughout the session, we invite participants to post your questions in the chat box. If you prefer to ask directly, please use the raise hand button during the Q&A session. Please also remember to fill the attendance list and evaluation links that will be given by the committee in the chat column. Ladies and gentlemen, to start the event, we invite you to see the following short video that presents a brief review of our knowledge exchange today. And now, to officially open the event, we warmly invite Mr. Febrio Kacaribu, Chairman of Fiscal Policy Agency, Ministry of Finance as the NDA of Indonesia, to provide the opening remarks. Mr. Febrio, the time is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Mariski. Good afternoon. Selamat datang. Welcome. Taftai Moril no U Karibuni. Welcome to the NDA GCF Knowledge Exchange, attended by representatives of NDAs and DAEs from the Republic of Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, Mongolia, and Uganda. Please allow me to extend my warm welcome to our speakers and moderators, Mr. Bajargal Zamba, Special Envoy for Climate Change, Ministry of Environment and Tourism, Mongolia, Mr. Pa Osman Jarju, Director of Country Programming, Green Climate Fund, Mr. Mahamadu Tunkara, Director of Governance, Strategy, Partnership, and Communications, Global Green Growth Institute, Mr. Andrew Masaba, Principal Economist, Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Republic of Uganda, Mr. Jonah Auka, Manager of Projects, Climate Change Development Authority, Papua New Guinea, and Ms. Leni Hidayat, Governance and Policy Specialist, Kemitraan. And to all the direct access entity representatives from the 4 participating countries, my appreciation to Indonesia's NDA Secretariat team, who has organized this event with generous support from the Global Green Growth Institute. The Green Climate Fund is globally known as the largest climate fund available to support developing countries in realizing their nationally determined contribution ambitions. As of March 2021, the GCF portfolio includes 173 projects worldwide worth around 30.2 billion US dollars, with an anticipated greenhouse gas emission reduction of 1.8 billion tons CO2 equivalent, and increased resilience for 498 million people. In implementing the mechanism, GCF works closely with focal points in each developing country known as the National Designated Authority, NDA. Ladies and gentlemen, international climate funding such as GCF can be really utilized effectively to address financing gap in climate change mitigation and adaptation activities for developing countries. One of the most prominent characteristics of GCF financing is that the country ownership principle, which ensure the proposed projects are aligned with the country's national priorities. Everyone in this virtual meeting agrees that the NDA plays a significant role in ensuring this principle implemented properly. Efforts to ensure the implementation of country ownership also require support from national key stakeholders, including the national government ministries and institutions, local governments, civil society organizations, direct access entities as well. Therefore, it is necessary for the NDA to understand steps needed to strengthen and increase the readiness of these national actors in accessing international climate finance, such as GCF. It becomes essential for the NDAs in each country to first prepare their own capacity in implementing the GCF mechanism. To achieve this, the readiness program from GCF plays an important role in supporting a country's climate finance readiness. Improved access to climate finance is even more important nowadays as the COVID-19 pandemic is still ongoing, with possible long-standing impact both to human being as well as the environment, potentially exacerbating the impact of the climate change. Another key actor in the implementation of GCF's country ownership principle is the direct access entities. These national accredited entities have the knowledge, experience, and network in national settings, which should enable them to design more site-specific climate projects. The DAEs also have strong presence in the country, which encourage better and more intimate coordination with the NDA and related stakeholders. Therefore, it is important for the NDA to enhance their capacity in navigating the national entities nomination and accreditation process. It is also important for the NDA to have strong knowledge on how to properly develop project pipelines from the EAEs in their respective countries. My fellow NDAs and DAEs representatives, as GCF funding can be accessed by all developing countries, it is inevitable that every country are at varying degrees of progress in accessing the fund. Throughout the process, they will have lessons learned and best practices on how to best implement the various GCF mechanisms. Thus, it may be beneficial for countries' NDA to learn the experiences of other NDAs, to share the best practices and lessons learned on the country efforts to increase their readiness and access to the GCF. The Fiscal Policy Agency, Ministry of Finance of Republic of Indonesia, as the NDA in Indonesia, is really honored to host this NDA Knowledge Exchange, which is conducted virtually due to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, the virtual format of the Knowledge Exchange have also enabled us to invite more countries as well as more participants from our fellow direct access entities. This would be really difficult to do in offline format otherwise. I believe more diverse participants will enrich our discussion today and benefit the participants' activities in accessing GCF. Our discussion today will focus on each country's experiences and lesson learned in nominating national entities for accreditation as well as the accreditation process itself, and in developing the direct access entities project pipeline. Direct access entities are one of the most prominent actors in accessing GCF due to its position and role in aligning the proposed climate projects with the national development priorities. Therefore, we hope that our meeting today is really beneficial to both NDAs and DAEs from the 4 countries. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that our knowledge exchange session today will not only broaden the perspective and enrich the capacity of the NDAs and DAEs in GCF accreditation process and project pipeline development, but also becoming a very good starting point for a strong networking among us, the participants. Hopefully, this will lead to more opportunities for us all to collaborate in the future for the achievement of the climate ambitions towards low emissions, climate resilient pathway. Thank you very much. Welcome and happy discussing.
Thank you, Mr. Febrio. Next, we kindly invite Mr. Paus Manjarju, Director of GCF's Country Programming Division, to deliver the keynote speech. Mr. Manjarju, the time is yours.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Kajerebu, for providing an opportunity for the Green Climate Fund to participate in this important event hosted by the Fiscal Policy Agency at the Ministry of Finance and the Global Green Growth Institute. I would want to congratulate my brother Muhammad Tunkara on behalf of the GGGI. Greetings to the NDAs and the direct access entities from Indonesia, Mongolia, Papua New Guinea, and Uganda. We greatly value the opportunity to exchange knowledge and lessons learned with partners, and it is indeed an honor and pleasure to be with you today. At the GCF, country ownership is key, and we would provide you what support we are giving to NDAs and direct access entities. As I mentioned, country ownership is a core principle of the fund, and it is reflected in the governing instrument and various board decisions. And a country-driven approach is key to the fund. At the 3rd meeting of the board in March 2013, the board noted that the GCF should recognize that country-driven approach is a core principle to building the business of the fund. And at the 18th meeting, the board endorsed initial best practice guidelines for establishing NDAs and the focal points, as well as best practice options for country coordination and multi-stakeholder engagements. At the 14th meeting, the board reaffirmed in decision B1408 the importance of direct access for country ownership in its strategy on accreditation. Guidelines for enhanced country ownership and country drivenness were developed later through decision B1714. The implementation of these guidelines facilitated country leadership roles in the development of country programs, concept notes, funding proposals, coordination and consultation with key stakeholders, capacity building of NDAs and focal points and direct access entities, and improve access to additional GCF resources. The Secretariat is currently reviewing the guidelines to identify best practices and lessons learned and emerging opportunities. Country ownership is essential and fundamentally important as a requirement in GCF investment decision-making process and is built during the design and development of projects and programs and to be evaluated throughout the project cycle. Let me highlight some of the important components of country ownership. First, the GCF guidelines remain flexible while recognizing the wide range of different country contexts. And country ownership is an ongoing and evolving process. It also means understanding the respective roles and responsibilities of the national designated authority, the direct access entities, and the Secretariat in ensuring country ownership in the development and implementation of projects and programs. It is important that national designated authorities have sufficient capacity and capability to perform functions and engage with the GCF. This includes access to tools and resources through the Readiness Preparatory and Support Program. The GCF values the importance of ensuring effective engagement of and ownership by relevant national and subnational stakeholders, including civil society organizations, the private sector, and indigenous people. At the GCF, we encourage and support a country to take ownership of climate funds to help build its local climate management capacity, encourage greater cooperation between stakeholders, embrace local knowledge for solving local problems, and deliver actions that target specific needs to combat climate change. An evaluation of the country ownership approach was undertaken in 2018 by the Independent Evaluation Unit of the GCF, and the full report is available on our website. The Secretariat has responded to recommendations from the evaluation by taking necessary key actions and steps forward to improve operations within the Secretariat and our engagement with partners. And as I stated earlier, we are also reviewing the guidelines. The GCF has strengthened its internal processes, and this includes updating guidelines and informational materials, including the country programming guidelines, the readiness guidebook, and project preparatory facility guidebook, which are also translated in French and Spanish. All these resources are available on our website. The GCF also has been strengthening the capacity of NDAs and direct access entities through both the Readiness Preparatory Support Program and the Project Preparatory Facility, the PPF. Through the Readiness Program, long-term financial support is available to augment capacity needs for both NDAs and DAEs. Short and long-term capacity can also be embedded into direct access entities to support it through the nomination and accreditation process, as well as to continue strengthening an accredited entity to build its existing pipeline by embedding a project development specialist to support the drafting of concept notes. In addition, The Secretariat has project development specialists that can be deployed under the current circumstances virtually, and when the situation changes physically, to work with NDAs and DAEs in the development of concept notes and funding proposal support. To access these resources, please reach out to your respective regional teams. We also provide training to national designated authorities to build capacity to engage with the GCF and provide support to NDAs to strengthen private sector engagement. The project preparatory facility has also made recent updates, including simplified PPF funding, which means direct access entities can request up to $300,000 US through a simplified template for quicker preparation and approval. The PPF also has a service that is available through a roster of independent consultancy firms who can provide project preparation services to DAs. To date, we have 49 national and 13 regional DAs accredited by the board. And the DAs comprise 17% of the total GCF financing that was approved. The Secretariat is working to balance the portfolio between international and direct access entities and to provide direct access entities with resources and tools to build their capacity and develop robust proposals to support countries to reach their climate ambitions. Let me reiterate our support for this opportunity to share knowledge across partners. And I do encourage you to continue the drive towards this kind of initiatives and exchanges that would enhance your own country ownership and country drivenness. Once again, I would like to thank through Mr. Kakaribu, the government of Indonesia, and also through Muhammad Tunkara, GGGI, for hosting this event. And let me express my gratitude to the participating NDAs and DAs from Papua New Guinea, Mongolia, and Uganda for sharing their experiences and lessons learned. Once again, I wish you all the best for this event and your deliberations. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Usman, for your remarks and setting tones of the session today. But ladies and gentlemen, we have some time, I believe, Mr. Usman, that to have a little discussion with you. If, as I was briefed, that we could have a little bit of dialogue with Mr. Usman. Just a short dialogue probably, so we welcome as well the participants to ask questions to Mr. Jarju if you have any questions for him or about GCF in general by raising your hands or write your questions in the chat box. We have around, I think we provide about 10 minutes to discuss with Mr. Jarju where we have him with us today. But while we're waiting for the questions to come in, Mr. Jarju, I understand that you mentioned there are a number of capacity strengthening programs in your remarks that you mentioned for the NDA and DIAs through the readiness programs. Also, you have embedded project development specialists that can be deployed to help developing concept notes, other trainings, and even simplified template for the DIA. However, so can you just briefly share with us about GCF strategies to specifically strengthen direct access modality, Mr. Jarju?
Thank you very much for this question. As you know, balancing the portfolio, the 50-50 access to GCF resources is key, particularly for adaptation, and direct access entities is really the driving force for country ownership and also accessing the resources directly from the GCF to the countries. We've realized that capacity has been a challenge, and through the readiness program, countries can request support to direct access entities. But again, due to the competing demands, sometimes the 1 million cap is not adequate for direct access entities to meet all their demands. So what we are doing now is during the identification of a direct access entity, the nomination of an entity for accreditation, we start from there by providing resources for pre-accreditation support, where we can support in policy development, in developing gender and environmental and social safeguards policies to enable the countries to go through the accreditation process. After accreditation, most of the direct access entities are conditioned, provided with some conditions to fulfill. And during this process, we do also support them through the readiness to provide resources to meet those conditions that are required for them to meet their full accreditation, and also working with them to complete their accreditation master agreements. But specifically, what we have realized is that one, due to the small size of direct access entities and the complexity of GCF policies, we keep on changing our policies, and we do have new policies that come in almost every board meeting. So it's difficult for small institutions and organizations to follow all these processes. And in developing the concept notes, we do also have, you have to take into cognizance some of the policies that we are developed. So we have a roster of experts in various sectors who we can deploy upon demand, because everything is country-driven, once a request is made, to support them in developing a concept, or they have a funding proposal from a direct access entity that has received a review from our secretariat on either the theory of change or the log frame or information, because again, you know, climate rationale is one key challenge for direct access entities, not necessarily direct access entities, but for countries in terms of data requirements and using the tools to really ensure that the proposal is crafted in a way that is acceptable to the board. So we do provide this kind of services through our experts that would support them from concept note now all the way to ITAB review, so that in the event of subsequent comments, they can support them in reviewing this. Now, in the event that a direct access entity wants long-term capacity enhancement, if they require an M&E specialist, or they need somebody to be reviewing their proposals, or somebody that would be supporting the development of readiness or proposals, they can still, through the NDA, request for this support. And through readiness, we can provide a consultant to work with them for 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, depending on the need of the DAE. We are also working on training programs on M&E, because we know developing a proposal to approval is not the end of the game. There is need for capacity throughout the project cycle. So there is a need for very strong monitoring and evaluation to really provide the capacity so that the DAEs would submit very good reports during the project cycle, and also conduct evaluation. So these are some of the tools and the support that we are providing. We have had that our processes take too long, and we have been streamlining our internal processes. And this is why we are also making available some of the policies in various languages. So this is now a trend and a norm. Whenever we develop policies, we try to have them in various languages, particularly French and Spanish, and we've also started Arabic in specific instances. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jarju. So yeah, you do provide a lot of examples on capacity strengthening areas that can be supported by GCF as well, including development throughout the project cycle, from the development of a concept node to the proposals, and throughout the whole project cycle. There's one old thing that you also mentioned, that the NDA can also be provided with consultants to assist the NDA, if I'm not mistaken. That's what you mentioned as well. But what about the recommendations from GCF maybe for NDA to support these direct access entities to build their capacities, maybe something more systematic, more structured as a NDA program, Mr. Jarju?
Thank you for this question. This is very important and very key, and as part of the country program development process, all the stakeholders need to be engaged so that they are aware of the priorities of the countries. And what we encourage is that the direct access entities should get their programs out of the country program, because direct access entities are part of the country. For a regional direct access entity, they need to develop an entity work program. But for a direct access entity, the country program is their work program. So the priorities must emanate from the country program. Hence, the NDAs need to work hand in glove with the direct access entities. They need to be open to them, provide them with the resources, particularly through the readiness, so that they can access the resources, develop guidelines, improve their systems and tools, and also enhance their capacities. But again, since there are competing demands and some of the NDAs don't open up to direct access entities and even civil society organizations, we are working towards having a special window for direct access entities. Hopefully, this would be submitted to the board, if not at B29, maybe at B30, so that the direct access entities would have a special window through which they can access the resources directly, but of course, upon coordination and approval of the NDAs, because what we don't want is to have a parallel authority to access GCF resources. The NDA is the single vehicle through which countries would have to access resources, and it is important that all stakeholders realize this. What we don't want to encourage is having NDAs being the world banks of the countries, where one person determines what is good and what is wrong for the country. They have to embrace the multi-stakeholder, multidisciplinary team that is representative of both national, regional, and sub-regional stakeholders, so that everything that is being driven and supported, it's owned by all the strata of society across the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jarju. That's very interesting. So yes, the NDA must work closely, hand in hand with the DIA, but also needs to think or develop the mechanism for a more broader multi-stakeholder engagement or involvement as well, including maybe even to the CSO to strengthen basically the country program. Well, thank you for being with us, Mr. Usman Jarju. Thank you for your time. I hope that we'll see you some other time soon. Thanks for being with us. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now we will begin our journey on the knowledge exchange between the 4 countries. The panel session will be moderated by Ms. Leni Hidayat, Governance and Policy Specialist from Kemitraan. Kemitraan is a well-known national NGO in Indonesia, and quite recently, Kemitraan was also accredited as DAE, Direct Access Entity of Indonesia. So congratulations to Kemitraan. And without further ado, let me hand over the floor to Ms. Leni. Ms. Leni, over to you.
Thank you, Ibu Mariski, for handing over the session to me. That's a quite flattering welcoming. So ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Leni Hidayat, and I work as a governance and policy specialist from Kemitraan. And as previously mentioned by Ibu Mariski, Kemitraan is the most recently accredited DIE from Indonesia. So thus, it is an honor for me to be involved in this discussion as your moderator. Now, before we begin, I think I will briefly explain the structure of today's discussion. So basically, we will have 3 distinct sessions. In the first session, we will be discussing the experience and lesson learned in nominating and readiness process of national entities. And our colleagues from the National Designated Authority, NDA of Papua New Guinea, and our colleagues actually basically from the NDA from the Uganda supposed to be here with us, but due to unforeseen reasons, our fellow NDA from Uganda cannot join with us. But now we have our delivery partner of the GCF readiness program in the Republic of Uganda, who will share their stories to kick off the session. Now that is for the first session. And we continue in the second session. We'll discuss the experience and lesson learned in developing the direct access project pipeline. Now the presentation for this session will be delivered by our colleagues from the NDA of Indonesia and Mongolia. And as you all have been aware, this is a knowledge sharing session where the knowledge is power, and we want to extract as much as possible the knowledge, whether both from the NDAs or the DIEs. So we'll be conducting the question and answer session with all the participants after the presentations. Now, during the Q&A, we highly encourage everyone to ask your questions by either writing your questions in the chat box or using a raise hand feature, and then you can unmute your mic. And finally, after the second session, we'll have the final session where we briefly discuss the potential of follow-up activities after today's event. Definitely, this is a very valuable event. We would not want this to be a one-time event, but it's a continuance and to make and to maintain the network of knowledge that we have today. So it is our hope that this very beneficial forum does not end, and we can actually explore more possibilities of cooperations, of learning each other and exchanging stories, and also secret recipe to further strengthen not only our professional network, but also make how the GCF projects become more and more impactful. So I guess I hope that my explanations was clear enough to everyone here. And without further ado, let us proceed to our first session to discuss the experience and lesson learned in nominating an accreditation process of national entities. Now we would like to present our first speaker, Mr. Jonah Auka, Project Manager from Climate Change and Development Authority for Papua New Guinea, with the following short video profile. To Mr. Jonah Auka, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much, Lenny, for that introduction, and appreciate the wonderful video that has been compiled on behalf of the NDA. So let me introduce myself. I'm Mr. Jonah Alka from the Climate Change and Development Authority of Papua New Guinea. As Lenny has mentioned, we are the national designated authority to the Green Climate Fund. And currently, as per the brief video presentation, we have accessed some readiness funding from the Green Climate Fund in 2017, and we have implemented our readiness programs over the last 2 years. And as part of the readiness program and as part of the implementation of the readiness program, we have been in the process of trying to also identify a national direct access entity. So we are in the process of trying to identify the direct access entities. And for over the last 6 months, we have been fortunate to receive support from the USAID Climate Ready project, where they have been able to provide some technical assistance to support the NDA to identify the potential DAEs for PNG. So right now, just recently, we have identified 5 national entities. That's the Department of National Planning and Monitoring. We have the Department of WEX. We have the Department of the Agriculture and Livestock. We have the Bank of Papua New Guinea and the Center for Excellence in Financial Inclusion. That's like an NGO which operates in the country that looks at supporting the SMEs and the banks in terms of trying to provide renewable energy products and provide loans in terms of supporting the communities to have access to solar powered equipment and so forth. So those are the 5 national agencies that we have identified. And the reason for why we have been able to identify these 5 is because when we were in the first readiness program which we implemented, we came up with our PNG country program. I think it's on the GCF website as well. And in that country program, some of the prioritized focus areas are transport, agriculture, renewable energy, and health. So once we looked at those priority areas, we zoomed down to which institutions are better in the position to help us out in terms of managing or having access to potential climate change funding sources where they can be able to implement projects on transport, agriculture, health, and so forth. So we last year around October, November, Papua New Guinea hosted a regional webinar with the rest of the Pacific region, where we wanted to engage with other Pacific Island countries such as Fiji, Vanuatu, Federated States of Micronesia, and the other Pacific Islands, to be able to share lessons like the exchange program that we're having now, but more at a regional level, where we were trying to get some feedback from countries like Fiji, countries like Cook Islands, and countries like Federated States of Micronesia, where some of the national entities are now accredited or have direct access entities to the GCF. So we wanted to, get the experiences in terms of, what is the process like, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, what are the risks of having to, be a DAE. And after that webinar, we were able to say, look, for Papua New Guinea, it's not impossible. We can be able to identify various institutions that have the potential, and then from there, with our communications with the Green Climate Fund through our regional reps, Ms. Diane McPherson, where we were able to, get assistance in terms of what are the requirements that GCF requires to be able to become a DAE. So 2 weeks ago, with the support from the USAID Climate Ready project, we were able to gather all the information. Well, firstly, we sent out a questionnaire, like a questionnaire that asks questions that are in line with the requirements of the GCF guidelines in terms of having direct access. So we use those GCF guidelines, direct access entity guidelines, develop questionnaires, and then we send them out to these 5 institutions to be able to check, to be able to see if they meet the requirements of the GCF. So just 2 weeks ago, myself and my colleague from USAID Climate Ready have been analyzing or reviewing the surveys or the assessments that have been undertaken. And by next week, we should be able to sit down and do up a short list from the 5 and select at least 1 or 2 to go through the GCF online DAE accreditation process. So currently, that's the story right now in Papua New Guinea, where we are now in the process of trying to select or shortlist out of the 5, at least 1 or 2 entities based on the feedback that they're provided, whether they have the requirements in place to go through the GCF online accreditation process. So it's like trialing it out on paper in terms of whether they have the fiduciary standards in place, they have anti-corruption policies, gender policies. So once we have those results or the results of the assessments on paper, then we are confident that they can go online and then be able to go through the GCF online accreditation process. So that will be done next week. And working closely with our GCF colleagues, Dan McFadden and Samantha Rabine, we keeping in close contact with them in terms of trying to support us, help us as the NDA to analyze all these documents from these 5 potential DAEs, and then potentially maybe by end of this month or early next month, we should be able to get these 2 entities to go online and then start the accreditation process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Auka, for sharing your experience by choosing out of 5. You will choose 1 or 2 for the direct access and how to be accredited. And for the next presentations, we would like to present Mr. Dennis Kanjuri Asimwe, the project manager for GCF readiness support to Uganda from GGGI, with the following short video profile. Mr. Dennis, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Dennis, I think you're a little bit cut off.
You hear me? Hello. Hello. Lenny, do you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you, but it's quite. Yes,
I beg
okay,
your pardon.
you're back on.
Glitches here.
Right, okay.
Okay. I would like to share with you from the Ugandan experience. But first of all, before I do that, I would like to extend the apologies of the NDA for having not been able to share with you the experience in nominating DAEs. But I hope our presentation as the delivery partner will also lend credence to the experience that they have had in terms of some of the approaches we have deployed in furthering the accreditation process. Okay, I hope my presentation is visible for you.
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay. Okay, it is essentially covering 4 aspects. The one is just a quick overview of the readiness support program, which I know we are all familiar with in terms of the scope. And then I will make an attempt to share our journey supporting 3 government nominated agencies and what lessons do we seem to pick, and also what could we begin to reflect on for us as actors in this space. Okay, our program is basically, we as the Global Green Growth Institute, we are implementing this program on behalf of the NDA. And our key partners in this one is the Kampala Capital City Authority, the National Environment Management Authority, and the Uganda Development Bank. And we're implementing this over a 2-year period, effective 2019. And we are working short of $1 million in terms of resource allocation. So of course, there are 5 areas that we are working with for this particular readiness program that we expect to end towards the end of the year. In terms of country capacity strengthening, we are supporting the NDA to enhance its coordination mechanisms. A number of things are going on there in terms of clarifying the country, the coordination mechanism, the actors, and all localizing the GCF procedures within the country framework. With regard to stakeholder engagement, we are dealing with 2 main things there. Refining or updating the country program, but also creating an online platform where we can access anything climate finance in Uganda by way of development of a climate finance portal. Of course, our major focus today is the accreditation, which is through the realization of direct access, where we're working with the 3 entities that I mentioned earlier. And then, of course, the pipeline of projects being developed, and also trying to explore how we can encourage or stimulate participation of the private sector in the climate change space in Uganda. So in terms of the accreditation support journey of the Uganda Readiness Program, we are working with 3 entities. You could have seen in the intro that we already have an accredited entity in the form of the Ministry of Water and Environment, which has been at this process for about 4 years, but was able to obtain accreditation on account of the waiver within the GCF provisions that took cognizance of their accreditation through the adaptation fund. So through that, they were able to, in that, I'm aware that they are currently finalizing the conditions for the AMA for them to be able to have the full accreditation. So in the case of the entities we're working with, the first one, Kampala Capital City Authority, is a sub-national government agency with an urban focus. So this is more of a frontline kind of service-based agency. You have the National Environment Management Authority, which also comes from the regulatory perspective. The government has deemed that being that they deal with environment issues, they would be a good candidate to provide for especially some of the nature-based interventions in terms of climate change interventions. The Uganda Development Bank is a wholly owned government development finance bank offering a range of financial products. So this one is brought on board by the NDA and government with a focus on trying to kind of look at the sustainable or looking at it with a sustainable frame of eyes in terms of providing or localizing or adapting the local development finance towards climate change projects, of course, with the possibility of leveraging, amongst others, the GCF funding mechanisms. In terms of scope, there are essentially two broad areas of what we are doing with them. Trying to get them accredited, so trying to go through the readiness, their readiness assessment for accreditation, their gaps, preparing the action plans for the accreditation of these, identification of bankable projects, knowledge exchange experiences, and so on and so forth. And then to the right, you have the pipeline development and also the long-term capacity issues that could have been mentioned in the FASTA are being dealt with here. So what have we done based on what we learned from the accreditation process of the Ministry of Water, which is almost concluded? Is that one, we are doing a four-stage kind of process. The first one, of course, being that the NDA has nominated these entities based on the various unique experiences or advantages that they present in terms of dealing with the NDC commitments, the GCF country program priorities, and so on and so forth. Like I indicated, some, for instance, KCCA is an urban authority, but also it is looked at as given the high rate of urbanization in Uganda, it is looked at as a good vehicle through which climate change issues could be handled in supporting other urban areas that are emerging. So we've had also inception meetings, basically introducing the GCF to these accredited entities, nominated entities, to help bring together the nexus between the GCF, the NDA, and DAEs. So this has helped us to kind of have joint agreement on how to operationalize the accreditation process. So we've had sit-ins with a wider group of the organizations, which then have informed the selection of teams that have been critical in this process. But also, these inception meetings have helped us to manage expectations. Some of the DAEs have their own understandings of the readiness program. So these platforms help us to manage these expectations and then begin to galvanize the support that is required for us to run through this process. So the third step being that we have gone through the accreditation readiness assessment in preparation for the submissions for stage one. And the things that we picked from the inception meetings was that we needed to identify focal points and teams to engage through the multidisciplinary process. We realized that from the experience of our accredited entity, we've had a very skeleton commitment in terms of staffing towards that. So it has also partly affected the process, the duration of even submitting for the first stage or completeness checks. So this has also helped us quite significantly because of the multidisciplinary nature of the process. So we are able to collate and compile information in real time, in small teams, and on an ongoing basis. Of course, we have also been able to identify preliminary institutional gaps, for instance, that are across the board for them. you find project implementation frameworks. In some are either partially developed or they are implemented on a project mode, so not being institutionalized. So some of those institutional gaps are being assessed, are able to be picked up, and then we are able to begin a process of supporting them to institutionalize them. To the far end, the fourth component relating to capacity enhancement, we've had knowledge exchange missions, I think with Ethiopia, where we picked or shared experience from what they were doing there and how they're handling accreditation and the processes thereafter. But most importantly for us, we've had an ongoing technical support through the stages of compiling the 7 sections, towards the 7 sections of the accreditation process requirements in the online accreditation system. So we've had both the GGI country team and with the support of a consultant working with these people on a day-to-day basis, interpreting these things. What does this mean? How do we go about it? And for us, it has we've been able to make submissions that at a faster rate than we did for the other entities. To date, we have submitted up to 2 of the 3. I will be able to explain why that has happened. So that we have some lessons also to reflect on. So again, as part of that, we are also, I know within the month, we shall be having technical working sessions with the DAEs, first independently as each of them, and then jointly to be able to cross-learn or cross-share experience in entity work program articulation, and therefore also project pipeline ideation, but in a practicum kind of model. What do we pick from there? That first is that the NDA's constant engagement is critical, as some, like in our setting, all the 3 entities are established by their own acts of parliament. So what does that mean is that they may report to different agencies or different authorities other than the NDA. So it may create I'm an independent child, I've grown, so I don't need to be directed on what to be done. So, but a constant engagement of the NDA has helped us to bridge these potential challenges. Again, flexibility is very critical along the way as we're progressing with one of the entities who we felt would be the most responsive, for instance, in all stakeholders assessment. A need for an MOU emerged, and this kind of delayed the process. But being able to engage together, we have been able to eventually have closure on that, and we are now progressing towards their submission of their application. We believe we shall be within this month. But the point here is that some of these things may also be picked in the initial sessions, the initial engagement sessions, if we pay attention to some of these details. So I thought that could also be something we could share. Encouraging the constitution of teams in the nominated entities in early stages is very critical to build momentum. This we picked from one of the entities, the Kampala Capital City Authority, which from other funding, like from the World Bank, has dedicated teams that work with those kind of funding agencies. And what does this mean? It means that you increase the chance of realizing your results or targets quickly. You're able to resolve the multidisciplinary aspects, mentality, but also in the events are sustained, able to complete the accreditation process and post accreditation. And we're saying here that for the fourth one, whereas these entities may demonstrate capacity to implement some of these projects of a certain category, some of them seem to have challenges meeting accreditation costs to support the category of accreditation preferred. So if we are able to meet beyond small, micro and small, but we do not have good budget allocations because we depend a lot on government for subventions, it may be difficult difficult at the point of request for that to readjust in budgets how to support those costs that have emerged in between a financial period that has already been approved. So the question begs is that can't the readiness program have a direct provision support that waiver even when they've already waived? So we've been engaging with the entities to say that already the readiness program within its framework and the policy framework has provided for waivers. So I think it's also important that you indicate a commitment. Of course, the challenge here is that they may be able to mobilize it in a subsequent fiscal period, but because this has happened at a point where that has not been provided for, it potentially may affect the duration or the speed at which we obtain accreditation. Again, the last one may be also share is that we need to reflect on the potential impacts of the commitment of these entities, especially with regard to the COVID-19 pandemic, given that some of them are frontline based. They may tend to pay attention to the emergency now, and then it affects their processes. So engaging with the fund through the online account systems may become a bit of a challenge. So again, these are some of the things we pick that may affect, but maybe it's for a season, but we thought we could share this as well. For us to reflect institutional readiness or alignment to accreditation status, how can they be supported to institutionally align themselves post accreditation status? Should a dedicated team be a requirement at the entities within the readiness program, or should we have a roving team within the NDA to support the post-institutional aspects? Project pipeline, how can we sustain this from the human and financing capacity requirements? We all know that early stage financing is a big challenge. You may have good project ideas, you may have good project concept notes, but then all those stages require some kind of support. And the question is here that to what extent, or in terms of timeline or scope, does the readiness program stop? Is it something we need to think about here? I don't know, but we thought we could share this as well. Accreditation costs, I've already elaborated that. How can we support that? How do we integrate that when we have a waiver? To what extent? If somebody is saying that $1,000 is an issue, of course, from a strategic point, it would seem a bit unserious, but those are the realities we are facing. So probably if I wanted to subscribe for the medium category, I'm forced, because I'll be asked to pay $3,000 over and above the waiver, I'm forced then to revert to a smaller level. Then again, it potentially creates another task in terms of building or improving or your level of accreditation. In terms of financing post-accreditation costs, how do we sustain activities of pipeline development, given that most of these agencies are heavily reliant on government subventions, which may not, because of the competing needs, dedicate funds for those kind of activities for these entities. I beg to stop there, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis. This is a very insightful presentation from you regarding the steps and how the lesson learned is being extracted throughout the process. Now, I see that I think there's actually comment from Mr. Osman Jarju about the Accreditation Master Agreement, or AMA, of the Ministry of Water and Environment was effective on 7th April 2021. Perhaps you would like to just respond to that briefly?
I take note of that information. I was just aware of the processes that were going on between the legal system here, government system that was leading to that. Thank you for that information.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Osman Jarju, for the additional comments. Now, thank you for the presentation from all the two speakers. Now I will open the Q&A session from the floor. I believe that the sharing the stories from the PNG and also from GGI from Uganda has, is an opening eyes for all of us in terms of the process of each country, even though it's different, but each have its own typical and unique approach throughout the process. And so you may ask your questions by writing your questions in the chat box, or perhaps you want to use you want to raise your hand, and later I will allow you to open or unmute your mic. But while we're waiting for the questions to come in, just to warm up our discussion session, I would like to give the initial question for Mr. Jonah Auka. I think it's very interesting to see how you select the 5 nominations, and into 1 and 2, becoming, the short list of the candidates. But can you please share with us how the CCDA assists the national organization in PNG to become accredited?
Thank you very much, Lenny, for that question. So currently at the Climate Change and Development Authority, if I got your question correctly, you're asking about how does the NDA support the national direct accredited entities, correct? Okay. So over the past 2 years, through the readiness program that we have implemented in partnership with Triple GI, we have carried out various awareness programs, sector-to-sector consultations, and then sort of having an engagement with the sectors in terms of how they can be able to be engaged effectively in addressing climate change issues within their sectors. So we have been doing that over the last 2 years. And for example, we've been working closely with the Department of Works in developing their climate change policy so that they mainstream climate change adaptation, climate change mitigation into their standard operating procedures and work programs, so that they see the importance of how climate change can assist them in terms of trying to climate-proof the infrastructures, climate-proof the roads and bridges. So we see that through this GCF funding, we see that they can be able to access funding to sort of complement what they're already doing. So right now, many of the sectors are doing the traditional, as usual, business as usual activities, but with the support from the Climate Change and Development Authority, we are able to complement the current work and help them with developing the climate change policies, reviewing the environmental safeguards, legislations, frameworks, so that they integrate or they mainstream climate change in their work programs. And currently, Department of Works is one of those national potential direct access entities that has put its hand up to be able to go through the process of accreditation, because they see that infrastructure development, building climate resilient roads and bridges is a priority, and that's also a priority within our country program. So currently we're supporting the Department of Works to be able to undertake this process, and it's a cumbersome process. I know Osman would agree with me in terms of the turnaround time, it sometimes takes 1 year, it sometimes takes 2 years to go through the accreditation process. And that's understandable. As a developing nation, we have challenges in terms of capacity to be able to manage projects, to have to follow the GCF guidelines, and being able to put those right policies and laws and legislations in place is quite a challenge in such developing country. But slowly but surely, we will eventually get there. And if other countries, developing countries, can do it, I'm certain that there's always a way to get there. So
thank you, Mr. Jonah, for that very insightful answers from you. And now perhaps I would like to also ask the initial question for Mr. Dennis. I see that you have quite a wide range of candidates, but where does the NGO play a role within the process? Whether they're being involved in the data collections, or maybe if before the beginning of the program development.
Okay, thank you for that good question. In terms of civil society involvement, I could say I would approach it from two areas. One, the NDA here has been very strategic in terms of constituting an interministerial or an interagency steering committee, supported in an advisory role. And it has a membership ranging from the public sector, private sector, civil society, and academia. So all these conversations in terms of providing of nomination letters or no objections for these entities are processed through these kind of things. But in terms of having them directly nominated, this has not happened. But as part of the readiness program, we have deliberately, under the country program update, had specific engagements with them to heighten their awareness in terms of what role they may possibly play in this process of the GCF related financing. So I would say that we've really, from an operational point, we've tried to incorporate them also by having specific sessions and identifying or agreeing on areas where they feel they need to engage. For instance, they have been very categorical that they would like to be supported, for instance, from the climate finance mobilization perspective of diplomacy in terms of supporting advocacy for climate finance, both at a national and international level. So that is where we are trying to involve them. And of course, also what is also a bit unique in our side is that the steering committee also, as part of its composition, has these nominated accredited entities. So there is an inherent, if you like, provision for engagement with them along the way, which is through their coalition network, which is at a country level.
Right. Thank you. That's a very interesting to hear that the NGO is being put into a very strategic position and also role. We have an incoming questions here. I think the first one is from Mbak Dewi Rizky from Kemitraan. I think it's for Mr. Dennis. The question will be, how do you maintain your pool of experts for years?
Thank you. I think for me, the straight question for how do we maintain a pool of experts for a period of time is about work breakdown structure. How do we unpack this work in a manner that, one, we are able to achieve the results of the process, and also still keep them on the rota. But generally, as GGGI, we provide for experts rota through which we can engage them on a call or needs basis, in addition to having a clear work breakdown structure that engages them in a manner that ensures that they support us in delivering the accreditation requirements. So ours is usually deliverable based, so that, and if you do it well, of course, you get onto the pool of expert roster, and we can easily call on you as and when the need arises. Some of them have now become embedded within the country program through some of the projects that have emerged. So within the country program, we are also having the benefit of cross-learning or deployment of our expertise.
Thank you. Is that a quite clear answer for Mbak Dewi?
Yes, thank you, Lenny. Thank you, Dennis.
Okay. And I think there's also a question from Mr. Mahadev. Is for our two speakers. Where do you see the need for greater supports in using the knowledge being shared to actually speed up the results in delivery of the current and future programs? So basically, how urgent is the greater supports for this knowledge being shared throughout the process? I think to both. I think I would like to welcome Mr. Jonah first, and with Mr. Dennis.
Thank you very much for that very useful question. You know, this knowledge exchange program is very, very important in terms of, you know, having to learn the different contexts from different countries, how they have experienced in terms of, you know, going through the accreditation process. I think there are different countries in the room that are at different stages of you know, the process. So for us in PNG right now, the need is for us to really, you know, we're just at the starting point, if I could say that, and we haven't really gone into the actual online accreditation process. I think in there we will be able to identify some of the challenges or the issues that we will be facing. But right now, at this stage, it's like more or less like a starting point for us. We've actually identified the potential direct access entities, and then now we're reviewing the assessments and the results that have come back, and we're more or less like at the confidence level right now is maybe, I'd say maybe 20 to 30% right now, where we're satisfied with some of the answers that have come in, like in terms of answering or providing requirements as per the GCF accreditation guidelines, and then the experiences that will be shared in the room are very much relevant to us in terms of the actual process itself. If someone in the room has actually gone through, like Lenny, like yourself, your organization, which is now a direct access entity, like that experience that you have gone through in terms of the accreditation process, what were the challenges, what were the risks, what do we expect when we are going to go into that process? That will help us, PNG, that will help maybe some of the audience in the room who are currently right now in the process to actually foresee or prepare themselves in terms of what to expect during the accreditation process. But as our colleague from GCF has mentioned, like GCF has also lent a hand in terms of helping the NDA go through this process. So it takes time, but we are confident that there's a process in place, and through the experience that will be shared will be helpful for us, in what to expect when we actually go into the process of accreditation.
Yes, thank you. Yes, experience is the best teacher for all of us, right? And I guess for Ms. Dennis, for just a quick response for the question.
Okay, thank you, Lenny. Just to build on Jonah's submission, success begets success. In terms of where do we see possible effort being directed. One thing we find with all our partners here is that they want to be reassured that we are competing with the rest of the world. What are the chances of us, first of all, getting accredited, but also it's not enough to get accredited. It's just a necessary but not sufficient condition in terms of climate change action. How do we get to resource mobilize? What guarantees do we have that once we are accredited, we are able to bring the prize home by way of mobilizing resources? So for me, from what we pick from here, is that we need to have these, if you like, hands-on exchanges. Say, for instance, if Ethiopia is succeeding in bringing in money, what has happened there? Could we have mechanisms, for instance, where they would come and spend some time with some of these accredited entities and work through some of these processes or challenges with them? Of course, depending on the times that we're in now, but some kind of hand-holding relation between those that have succeeded beyond the accreditation, but also brought in money as a result of obtaining that status. It is very important to keep these people's eyes on the balls if they know there's somebody they relate with in a similar environment.
Yes, thank you. And for that, to continue both statements and answers, I would like to invite the two examples from Hashbank, from our colleagues from Mongolia, and also Kemitraan as the only accredited NGO in this forum. I think perhaps for Hashbank from our colleague Mongolia, basically Hashbank only took roughly 1.5 years to be approved. That's a very fast, and it's one of the fastest DIE accreditation process. Perhaps I would like to invite our colleagues from Hashbank Mongolia. Could you please briefly share the secret recipe for this tremendous achievement?
All right, thank you. Greetings to all the participants to this event. So in terms of, as you say, the secret recipe, I guess one can call it implementation of good corporate governance by Hashbank, in the sense that the shareholding structure of Hashbank restricts the maximum amount of ownership of each shareholder to 20%. And this has kind of allowed us to attract strategic investors that were very important to us. For example, the IFC and the EBRD and so on, which are both, of course, accredited entities of the GCF. So by having them as shareholders, it enabled us to adopt their policies and procedures that were already in line with the GCF and implemented at the organizational level. So, and that really helped us sort of speed up the accreditation process. Now, realizing that not a lot of organizations may already have their policies and procedures in line with those of the GCF, this may be a bit of an unrealistic expectation to get accredited in such a short period of time. So I guess the key takeaway for institutions would be to focus on the accreditation process without worrying too much about how long it may actually take, because in the end, each organization is different.
Thank you very much for sharing those very concise but yet very strategic counters. I mean, basically 1.5 years is really, really fast. And I would like to also to invite our colleagues from Kemitraan, my organization. And could you please briefly share with us the challenges that Kemitraan faced during the accreditation process? What is new that has been never encountered before, and within the accreditation, you kind of like feel it is a challenge?
Okay. Thank you, Lenny. Greetings to you all. Well, Kementerian actually obtained almost 4 years to be accredited, unlike the Mongolian, only 1.5 years. But the greatest challenge for us is actually, the first is we need to select the size of the accreditation itself. We just be able to select the micro size because of the capability of the organization as the NGO. It's not more than 18 million per project that we already had before. And then also we need to choose only grant. We can actually choose loan. So that's also become the challenges for us, because we need to discuss with our board that we will only choose grant for this accreditation. And then the most important thing is about the safeguard that we have is standard operational procedure that for the anti-corruption, anti-bribery and corruptions, that lucky us that we have already had that, but we need to get into more detail to actually comply with the standard. We have been accredited by Adaptation Fund, so it's little bit challenge to maintain that as well. But we manage to do so. And also for environmental social management plan, that usually the big company already have that, but as the NGO, we only had a few lines in the general standard operational procedures, so we need to actually put that in detail as well. And then also the child protection standard that we need to put it in detail as well. And then for more is about the financial system. We need to put attention on the anti-fraud system that we have to maintain for years, and then we need to get more detail and also more SOP on that. So I think that's all about the standard operational procedure that we face as a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mbak Dewi, for sharing. That's quite valuable, how to choose the size. It also becomes one of the challenges. And ladies and gentlemen, we came into the end of the first session. I would like to thank for all the speakers, specifically to Mr. Jonah and Mr. Dennis. And for your all active participation in session 1. And perhaps we can move on to our second session now, which is becoming more interesting, is that learning how to develop and accelerate the direct access projects. I think this is all has been a dream for the DIEs. So I would like to invite our first speaker, Ms. Tian Lestari, as the Director of the Center for Climate Change and Multilateral Policy, the Republic of Indonesia, with the following short video profile. To Ms. Tian Lestari, kindly deliver your presentation.
Thank you, Mbak Leni. Can someone share the, okay, that's good, thank you. Very good morning and good afternoon for everyone, wherever you are. First of all, I would like to thank to Bapak Febrio Kacaribu and Mr. Osman Jarju for opening this very important event. I would also like to greet my fellow panelists, Mr. Bajargal Zamba, Mr. Andrew Masaba, Mr. Jonah Auka, and Mr. Muhammadu Tankara. It is an honor to be with you today. I will be speaking as representative of the Indonesia's NDA. But I think before I start, maybe I should mention an apology that maybe I cannot join this meeting after my presentation due to an urgent engagement that I have to attend in person. So my deputy Pak Dudi will be replacing my position should there's any questions or comments that we need to respond. So I would like to share our experiences and lesson learned in developing the direct access project pipeline in Indonesia. Next, please. So let me start by providing you the context of climate finance in Indonesia. So in order to achieve Indonesia's emission reduction and resiliency target, around $300 billion estimated are needed to finance the required actions and policies in mitigation and adaptation cluster. And as shown on the chart on the left, of all the sectors that we need to address, a huge part of the funding is allocated for energy and transportation sector due to the nature of investment in these two sectors. So while on the right-hand side, the slide shows that the national budget can only cover like around 23% of the mitigation financing needs and 41% of the total adaptation cost required in the National Adaptation Plan. So the country requires to look for investment from other sources, such as, of course, private sector and international funding, especially on climate funding, GCF. Next slide, please. So Indonesia's target comprised of several policy sectors divided into the mitigation and adaptation cluster. In mitigation, we prioritize sectors such as energy, forest and land use, industrial processes and product use or IPPU, waste, and agriculture. Meanwhile, in adaptation, we focus on three sectors, which are economic resilience, social and livelihood resilience, and ecosystem and landscape resilience. Next slide, please. So a country program in Indonesia for the GCF always considers the need of our NDC and target beneficiaries. In each cluster, there are three main criteria for prioritizing projects that will receive the GCF financing. In mitigation, we noted a number of points that we hope that GCF first prioritized for projects that involve cutting-edge and capital-intensive technologies. And second, GCF should be allocated to priority sectors with a significant financing gap, such as the energy sector. And third, the private sector should be encouraged and prioritized, especially for loans instrument. While in adaptation, we put emphasis on the vulnerability of provinces identified through priority locations based on its disaster risk and potential economic losses. Sorry, some interruption here. And next, the GCF funding can also be utilized to enhance the role of local communities, local governments, and companies assisting communities through access of grants. And lastly, the GCF funding should be utilized in adaptation priority sector, such as water, agriculture, health, marine, and coastal. Next slide, please. So one of our efforts in creating a robust project pipeline while implementing a country-driven approach is through conducting a program called the Call for Project Concept Note, or PCN. The most important requirements to be put in place is the alignment of the project with the climate change priorities. The call for PCN is a platform to gather potential projects from national stakeholders, provide technical assistance in developing the shortlisted projects up to GCF submission standard. And of course, this is the most important part as well, is matchmaking. The slides show that what is the flow in developing a GCF project pipeline. So starting from a project concept notes submission, then announcement of selected notes, then consultation with ministries. Then we also conduct writing trainings, then up to matchmaking before submitting to GCF. Next slide, please. So our experience in the first call for PCN that conducted in 2019-2020, showing that there were more than 100 simplified concept notes submitted to the NDA. So after going through many processes, we submitted 4 concept notes to the GCF. And this process also identified several micro-scale projects for adaptation, which should to be a program for an adaptation financing facility from our direct access entity, Kemitraan. And from this experience, some of the best practices we were able to pick up, among others, are that the matchmaking process has been an effective way in creating a platform for international or national accredited entities and project proponents to enhance the possibility of some agreeable or workable project for both. Then the concept notes writing capacity building is also useful to increase the capacity in the country to develop robust climate change projects. And the other best practice is the transparency and clear step-by-step have provided the participant a clear expectation from the beginning of the process. And also from the first call for PCN, we learned about the importance of setting up a project criteria as the preliminary filter before the review. So, and buy-ins from accredited entities and ownership from ministries can be established through a request to submit their project priorities before the publication of the call. And lastly, additional concept writer and longer time may be required to strengthen the concept notes. Next, please. So next, I'll be highlighting the role of the DAAs in Indonesia in developing project pipelines in the next 2 slides. So there are currently 2 direct access entities or DAAs with whom we actively collaborate with in GCF activities in Indonesia. The first DAA is Indonesia, one of Indonesian SOEs, called PT Sarana Multi Infrastruktur or PT SME. Their goal is to serve as a catalyst for accelerating national infrastructure development through their contribution to the sustainable development and climate resilience of communities in Indonesia. PT SME plays a role as an executing entity for the project called Geothermal Resource Risk Mitigation, or GREM. which is a geothermal exploration facility that has picked up some potential project proponents starting last year. In addition, there is a project that is under project preparation facility, and two others that are under concept node development. While one is being managed as the result from the first call, which is green hybrid microgrids projects. Next slide, please. The second DAA is the Partnership for Governance Reform, or Kemitraan. It's the US DAA in Indonesia, accredited just recently in November 2022. So as an NGO, Kemitraan has a unique role in supporting the government to achieve the NDC target at a micro level project. And currently, Kemitraan has two ongoing concept nodes development, focusing on the adaptation sector. So the first one is the adaptation financing facility for micro-scale projects. And the second one is the food security project. We hope that we will see positive outcomes from these two projects. So having these two DAS, next slide please, thank you. Having two DAS and observing their role, we can say that PT SME and Kemitraan are already aligned with the main project criteria prioritized according to Indonesia's country program document. We can even say that they're like complementary. For example, for a mitigation sector, PT SME will finance medium to large scale projects in the energy sector and provide financing to private sector. On the other hand, Kemitraan finances innovative micro small projects in the climate adaptive activities and providing grant for private sector project development. And further, in the adaptation sector, PT SME can finance climate adaptive infrastructure covering water and health security. They're also capable to provide concessional loans to local governments. Meanwhile, Kemitraan can finance national non-infrastructure activities covering agriculture and marine and coastal sector. And then Kemitraan also has strong network with local communities and CSOs, which enable meaningful collaboration with smaller communities. So next, learning for what has been ongoing thus far. From the NDA's perspective, we recognize that there are still several challenges faced by the DAAs. For PT SME, we observed that they may still need the assistance while building their own capacity to develop project proposals with international donor standard. They also to access GCF certain instruments such as loan guarantee or equity. PT SME needs to structure a project that engage other financial institutions to ensure the project feasibility. And the next is as kind of financing a vehicle of the Ministry of Finance. PT SME has a specific mandate, specifically on infrastructure, as reflected in his name. So we can say it's less flexible in providing financing to other or to more sectors. While for Kemitraan, as a new DAA in Indonesia, challenges have been discussed several times with the NDA. So we observed that Kemitraan still requires support in guiding the potential project implementers to follow the GCF standards. And Kementerian also needs to develop or enhance more resources and capacity to be able to simultaneously monitor the implementation of multiple projects. And lastly, Kementerian needs to also strengthen their capacity to be able to manage a project or program up to 10 million US dollar in value. So, but then I would like to welcome colleagues from PTSME and Kementerian later if they'd like to add or provide inputs on this topic. So, next slide, please. So on this last slide, I believe I would like to share that the efforts to actively involve local stakeholders, especially CSOs and local communities in the GCF projects in Indonesia that have been undertaken through a number of activities, such as invitation to participation in focus group discussion or FGD for no objection letter or NOL issuance, inviting representatives from line ministries, Ministry of Female Empowerment and Child Protection, related CSOs and or impacted communities, and also independent reviewer. We also hold an annual participatory review or APR forum, a platform for all stakeholders, including NGO, to review the GCF activities and project implementation. That may include country program review, project monitoring, NOL issuance mechanism, coordination mechanism for PCN input, and NDA's formal consultation process. So this brings us to the end. I would like to thank you for your time and attention. So I think, yeah, we are open to any question and looking forward for a very fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Dian, for that very comprehensive presentation. And our next presentation will be delivered by Mr. Batyar Galzamba, Special Envoy for the Ministry of Environment of Mongolia. And we would like to welcome Mr. Batyar Gal with the following short video profile. To Mr. Batyar Galzamba, kindly deliver your presentation.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Leni Hadayat, for giving me the floor. And first of all, I'd like to express my thanks to the NDA Indonesia for organizing this very important event in cooperation with GGI and GCF. I think it was very important the participation of Mr. Osman Jarju in person, and who was highlighting some very important progress in GCF, especially on terms of support for member countries in development of concept note and in accreditation process and so on. Leni, with your permission, as a moderator, I would like to delegate my duty to make presentation to my colleagues who are working and engaged directly in this process. Ms. Amartoya from Climate Change Research and Cooperation Center, which is serving as Secretariat for NDA of Mongolia, Ministry of Environment and Tourism. And also I asked representative of direct access entities, Trade and Development Bank and House Bank to make also a short contribution to this presentation. And having said that, I would like to ask Ms. Amartya to talk,
Okay.
share about our very modest and limited experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bacharo. Thank you for having us. Just without further ado, I'm just gonna share the screen with you folks. Just a sec. Okay. Can you guys see?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So as Mr. Jarjo stated in his opening remark earlier, it sure is vital for countries to have a country ownership through country programming. And we're thrilled to be included in within the 17% of direct access entities globally. And this is currently, the Mongolia have 10 funded projects, as you may see on our country programming website. And one of the direct access entities has implemented or implementing still 1/3 of the projects of this 10 fully funded projects, and mostly focusing on the renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. So of which the 5 of the 10 projects are for mitigation, and the 4 of them are cross-cutting, and 1 of them are fully adaptation process. So when we develop our priorities for projects, we ensure that these align with our NDCs, which was updated 2019 recently. Also, we conducted qualitative climate change policies and analysis, and they are priority areas for, as you can see over here, for the reduced emissions from or mitigation, and increased resilience or for the adaptation. These are the areas of Mongolia's priority, which is also in line with the GCF's 8 strategic results area and the 6 investment criteria, which is actually a vital factor for especially the potential for paradigm shift for Mongolia. Our country program includes a holistic approach to prioritize the adaptation. This is just the general. This is just the general concept of how to develop diagram, how to propose and being developed and submitted the proposals. Is our Indonesian partner just elaborated very in detail. So I'm just going to move on to Mongolia. So Mongolia's NDA to the GCF is designated by the government of Mongolia. And as you can see over here, nationally designated authority for Mongolia is Ministry of Environment and Tourism, and the main point of contact between Mongolia and the fund. So NDA has certain roles and responsibilities, which is to recommend to the GCF board funding proposals in the context of Mongolian climate change strategies and plans, including through a consultation process, to facilitate the communications of nominations of entities to the fund, and seeks to ensure consistency of the fund proposals from national, subnational, and regional and international implementing entities with national plans, policies, and strategies. And NDA is also one of the main roles to issue no objection letter and act as a focal point for GCF. And NDA is, you can all see over here, NDA will be utilized the following structure. So the Ministry of Environment and NDA secretaries within the Ministry of Environment, also just the newly established state-owned enterprise, the Climate Change Research and Cooperation Center, and National Focal Point, and the Country Coordination Group. And we hold country stakeholder convention annually. And just to briefly mention each of the actors' roles. So climate change and research and cooperation center was established to facilitate the implementations of commitments received under the UNFCCC and Paris Agreement, and also serves as a think tank for implementation of state policies. And NDA Secretary is responsible for the day-to-day activities for GCF operations in Mongolia. And so for no objection, so also NDA is, I just mentioned NDA is one of the roles is to issue no objection procedure. So for that, actually we formed and developed a no objection procedure within the NDA manual, which is to start from our next proposal when we issue or reject the no objections letter in the future. Within that, we detailed the NDA will review and evaluate the proposal by sending the evaluation form to the country coordination group, which consisted of many stakeholders, as you can see over here. And when we receive our proposal, we will deliver our proposal along with our evaluation form within the 10 days. And then when country coordination group relevant representatives will review the proposal and evaluate the proposal with the evaluation form and send this form to the NDA to us within 10 days. So if then after mutual or common agreement, the NDA will see in the national focal point will either issue or no issue or reject the no objection letter, and then we will submit to the regional GCF team. So this is the basic overview of our national country programming structure and the procedure for no objection letter. And now, sorry, my internet is okay. So I'm just gonna call Mr. Mukir, the relationship manager of Green Funding Office at the Trade Development Bank of Mongolia, which he will be more focusing on the accreditation process of the direct access entity, how the bank got the accredited and so on.
Okay, thank you, Amartya. So good afternoon, dear esteemed participants for this NDA Knowledge Exchange meeting. And as Ms. Amartya mentioned, I work as relationship manager in Green Funding Office of TDBM, and I'm supposed to share our brief experience on our accreditation, since we recently finalized our AMA. And there are 2 direct access accredited entities in Mongolia, and both are from private sectors. So this shows.
Excuse me, okay. Can you guys see my screen on?
I can see. I can only see the slides on the left side, but if you can just share the screen in a full.
Yeah, seems. Give me the show. Sorry, Indonesia team. Do you have my slides, right?
Yes, we can help to share the slide.
For some reason, my computer just froze. I'm trying. Can you see it now? Let me. Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, you are.
Okay, so can you just turn to the next slide? Okay, so as I mentioned, there are two direct access entities and both from the private sector. So this shows how private sector is engaging actively in climate change issue in the country. So regarding the accreditation, Trade and Development Bank of Mongolia has chosen a medium-sized category to mainly focus on large scale of climate projects in Mongolia. And I was the one in the team who worked through the whole stage of accreditation process from the beginning till the end. And here, I just wanted to share very short slides on our experience from the accreditations and lessons learned from the whole process. So first of all, becoming an accredited entity of GCF is not an easy and fast process, as we both mentioned during this knowledge exchange meeting. So especially for the national direct access entities. So the process starts with the NDA nomination, and we were nominated by our NDA back in March 2017. So the whole process almost took 3 years. So next slide, please. So on the one hand, we had policies and practices in place that can satisfy GCF's basic fiduciary standards. And on the other hand, there were still a few areas that we need to newly build up in order to meet the criteria. For example, we developed 4 new policies and adopted them in the bank and prepared 1 business plan. So overall, we prepared 262 separate files to close all the pending items from the accreditation application. Next slide. So when we first started, we followed these key steps. And as you know, there are many rounds of due diligence. For each round of due diligence, we maintained 3 to 4 weeks at maximum to respond with prepared supporting documents and with translation. And one of the reasons I believe why it took somehow long in the process was that there were more than 100 entities seeking accreditation from all around the world. And for GCF side, accreditation panel was loaded with this many applications. And we were receiving commented feedback generally after 1 to 2 months. So that's why this was one of the main reasons we took almost 36 months until we got our accreditation. So from the overall process, we learned these key things as lessons. So in order to become an accredited entity, it's really efficient to form a dedicated internal team. So in our case, we had 3 full-time staff working to handle the whole process. Next, it's helpful to hire experts where you feel you need an adequate expertise. So third, the timing is crucial. And from the candidate side, it's really important to determine and keep the response time at interval, certain level. And next, of course, if the entities have proven climate track record, that will be really supporting. And lastly, if the entities already have policies in English, this is good because translation really takes time. So in our case, we had to face, but somehow we still have English policies, but for the new policies, we need to, as soon as we adopted them in the organization, after that, we also translated and then delivered it as supporting documents to the accreditation panel. So this is a very short list of the lessons learned from the whole accreditation process. So now our bank already in the process of developing the concept of GCF and actually engaging our NDA and also private sector facility from the GCF.
Thank you very much. Do you have any additional points from Mr. Bhatyargal? You have a very strong team here. It was a very cohesive presentation.
I think all 3 presenters said everything, and I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And that's a really wonderful presentations, and it's really touching the core of the insights from all the process of having those 9, combined multi-countries and also direct access, and also the overall of the projects of the portfolio of Mongolia. So now I believe that many participants are looking forward for the question and answer sessions. Now, basically, I would like to open the question and answer session by looking at the time. And please, perhaps you can ask the question by writing in the chat box or using the raise hand feature. We have basically, perhaps I would like to warm up the discussion by having the initial question to Mr. Dudi, who is currently replacing for Ms. Dian. Basically, you've mentioned about the matchmaking process. It's a very unique term. Could you please elaborate more in terms of what is unique about the matchmaking process in Indonesia compared to the other countries?
I'm not very sure if this is very unique to Indonesia, but I hope so. It is indeed a very interesting term that we made, matchmaking. It's kind of, lovers. But in some, this is the NDA initiative to get project proponent that submitting proposal, a concept note to the NDA to be able to meet with their AEs, which would otherwise be very difficult for them to meet because AEs have their own agenda or vision. So with this matchmaking, we as the NDA, which has a convening power in the country, to get them together and discuss how they could work together to propose the proposal to the GCF. I guess that's the essence of the matchmaking clinic that we have in the PCN process.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dudi, for the explanation. And perhaps I would also to ask Mr. Bhatjargal about, I see the charts that as an NDA, you were able to drive the multi-stakeholder, which consists of many parties, to be able to review from 5 until 10 days. That's a very tight timeline. What is the key of making sure that all those people could actually, have a really timely response towards the review?
Key issues, those who selected as a member of team, the project proposal and so on shouldn't be quite new one. They already have some information about that. Even at some stage, they're already involved in this process, and therefore for them to make some assessment and to provide some score is not so difficult, and therefore just establish it 10 days. And of course sometimes could be some problem, and therefore if needed they can also contact to some other expert to have more deep knowledge about the issue and so on. Therefore, this process is okay for us, but we haven't yet accumulated enough experience on that, and therefore we can't tell exactly if it's good or not so good. only after 2 or 3 years, if you will organize next meeting again like that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Batyogal. We have questions from the floor to the Indonesia team. How often can the project list be updated on the country program? This question is coming from Josh Elleru.
Thank you, Josh, for the question. We have no specific timeline for country document revision, including the project list. But in principle, the country program document will be revised as, for example, policy documents have changed. And in terms of project list, that's more flexible than that. So along the way, if we see that the project list needs to be added, then in certain point of time, those lists can be added to the country program.
Okay, thank you. To Josh Elleru, is the answer sufficient for your to your knowledge?
Yes, it's okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I guess we also have our several direct entities, access entities here. We have PT SME from Indonesia and also Kemitraan. Maybe I would like to invite for PT SME to actually share as an executing entity of the geothermal resource risk mitigation, the project from the World Bank. Can you share with us how the support is reflected and implemented in the project?
All right, thank you, Bu Leni. My name is Farah from PTSMI. So I'll try to answer your question regarding the support program. Wait a second. Okay, so regarding the grant program, so we have also, so in addition to the program itself, which consists of loan and also the risking instruments to support the development of exploration of geothermal in Indonesia. So there are also technical assistance components for PTSMI, which comes from various sources. One of the resources also from the GCF. So this technical assistance will be used to support PTSMI in implementing the program, for example, to recruit experts for the legal, technical, procurement, or also like environmental and social aspects. In addition to that, there are also technical assistance that will be aimed also for the ministry, not just for us as the direct entity.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Putih. Thank you for the answers and the response. And perhaps if you're looking at the time now, so ladies and gentlemen, I think this will be the end for the second session. We would like to say thank you for the speakers. And perhaps I would like to invite perhaps Mr. Dudi, who you would like to ask a question.
Thank you, Mbak Leni, for the very last question. I think I have a burning question to Mongolia, which we know that the development of NDA is impressive, and the world is looking at you. And the very last slide that you showed us, you mentioned about the NDA having privileges and immunities with the GCF to get the conditionality feature of the funding from the GCF. Could you elaborate more on that?
All right, thank you for the question. So I was not directly involved in the establishment of the agreement, but I believe it is an intergovernment agreement between perhaps the government of Indonesia and the GCF. And this would outline specific clauses such that any funding of the GCF would be exempt from withholding or concessional taxes. I mean, and all the national taxes as well. And I believe Mongolia has established it, so the funding is pouring in without many deductions.
Thank you for the answer.
Thank you very much. I guess this will be the last question in our second session. Thank you very much for all the speakers. I think from our colleagues, NDA from Indonesia, and also a team from Mongolia. Basically, I think that all the presentations in the second session basically is very insightful. Now, we would like to continue for the last session. I think this will be a very interesting one because I think from our today's session, we learned so much between NDAs and also the DIEs, and how that this knowledge could strengthen not only for the nomination and accreditation, but also for accelerating the direct access projects. So I would like to give a roundabout basically session and also deliver to each NDAs, the representative of NDAs, but I believe that our colleague from PNG, they have basically they have their permit to come from this event to because there's a time differences. So basically, I think currently we have a representative from the Uganda, Mr. Dennis Asimwe, and also Mongolia, Mr. Batyargal, and Indonesia. I would like to deliver a questions that do you have any suggested activity that we could actually submit together to the GCF or submitted to the GCF for the next knowledge exchange activities in the future. But if you do, what kind of topics that will basically interest you the most? Thank you. Perhaps I would like to hear from Mr. Dennis first, and then Mr. Batyargal and Mr. Tudi.
Okay, thank you for the very enriching experience this morning for me. By way of suggestion, please bear with me if if I break, my internet is getting poorer. I thought that before we engage with them, we could, within maybe the small secretariat that organized this, arrange to tease out a capacity requirements from all of us. And then we were able to categorize them. And then probably this could inform a more targeted conversation with the GCF by way of proposal. But I have in mind some form of, from where we sit here, where what we see in Uganda is targeting project development. How do we support the entities to particularly target certain windows? So some kind of programs that would help them enrich their project ideation process, and therefore being able to also, as a follow through, how do you leverage co-financing for the various projects? And of course, without leaving out the private sector, how do we continue to align the private sector to the global agenda? So those, for me, could be areas we could run with from Uganda, but I thought probably if we have also some kind of two-stage, maybe peer-to-peer, then also the GCF to the countries or entities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dennis, for the inputs. I think that's for the ideas. Basically how the topics on the financing on various projects becoming one of the key topics for the next one. And I believe I would like to perhaps could be responded to by Mr. Bhatyarga and later by Mr. Dudi.
Okay, thank you very much. And as a message from today's discussion, especially directed to GCF, that, for example, even today's participation of today's events, countries quite different, and Indonesia, Mongolia, and so on, and island countries, landlocked countries, very different size of population, and so on, and therefore the country circumstances is very important. And of course, GCF is developing very good guidelines for us, but it is very difficult to develop guidelines which can meet all specific and need of countries, and therefore we need to try to make very good adjustment to the country specific and so on. In terms of Mongolia, for example, Mongolia was around 20 years ago, it was centrally planned economy, and private sector was not so active in Mongolia, but nowadays private sector is principally doing how to say and the all national economy is just backed by private sector, and therefore now Mongolia is trying to engage private sector, establishing special entity called Green Finance Corporation jointly with GCF. And if GCF can support countries in responding to need of countries with different specific, it would be very interesting for developing countries, I think. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Dudi, please.
Very excited and grateful to hear all those experiences from other countries. Very so much to learn from them. And having said that, if I could mention what activities that GCF can offer to countries, of course, the annual regional structured dialogue should be continued, of course. But other than that, maybe a small forum with a specific topic for specific region, for example, will be great to have that maybe annually or biannually from the GCF. I think that's all from my side.
Yes, and I believe that the basically the idea of having a specific topic based on the typology of the cluster of countries, that is very pretty much very interesting ideas. So the one that has the similarities could actually share the quite similar experience, and also how to strengthen and make the project more impactful. Now, I guess I believe that when we look at the time, it's very pretty much we are on track, and I think at the end, hopefully that this valuable forum, I believe that the first is being initiated by Indonesia. Then perhaps for the next knowledge exchange event could be perhaps being initiated by other NDAs. And so I would say thank you so much for the valuable inputs and insight from all the participants and all the speakers. And now we have now reached at the end of our discussion. And I would like to extend my greatest appreciation for our distinguished panelists, Mr. Batial Gazamba and Ms. Dian Lestari, which now represented by Mr. Dudi Riliadi and Mr. Dennis Asimawe. And for Mr. Jonah Auka, who have already left earlier, for all the great presentations and insights. So I would also like to thank NDA from Indonesia and GGI as the incredible host, and as well as the DAEs for your valuable participation in the discussions. And we have high hopes that for the further to strengthen this very beneficial and very fruitful forum. And we look forward to hopefully meeting everyone again in the near future. So thank you once again for having me as your discussion moderator. And I would like to hand over the session back to our lovely Master of Ceremony, Ibu Mariski. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maleni, for the discussion and for guiding the discussion for us to get key takeaway points from our country sharing today. And my greatest appreciation to all the panelists for sharing your experiences and giving us insightful information of things that we can try to learn and expand more within our own countries as well. We also invite participants to please kindly fill out the evaluation form from the link that's been circulated by the committee in the chat box. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the knowledge sharing events, and to close the event, we kindly invite Mr. Muhammadu Tungkara, Director of Governance, Strategy, Partnership and Communications, GGGI, to provide closing remarks and to conclude the event. Muhammadu, the time is yours.
Thank you very much, Mariski. Very good. Let me check first on the sound before I continue. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, very well.
So personally, I've been enjoying the past 3 hours listening to very diverse and rich experiences from colleagues from PNG, Uganda, Mongolia, and Indonesia. And I think it also shows to us the power of knowledge sharing. Knowledge sharing for helping us to scale up the success, for helping out to step up the result, and also helping us to advance and leapfrog so that current and future programs can benefit from the lesson learned, and we can share together and move forward. Good morning, good afternoon, colleagues, participants. It's a pleasure for me to have joined from the beginning and to be able to make the closing remarks. But before doing the closing remarks, please allow me to thank the organizer and echo those thanks. I think for organizing an event like this, and knowledge sharing, and having people from different continents joining and sharing views, I hope you all have enjoyed it. And I think I heard in one of the, I think it was one of the moderators saying, this is the start. Knowledge sharing is a process, but it also has a powerful tool that we have to help us deliver on the different commitments. And the two main objectives of today's event, one, increasing the NDA knowledge on various GCF-related processes, as well as two, facilitating dialogue and sharing experiences. I think we really had a good opportunity today to experience those two. Both Mr. Chairman, Fabio Kakaribu of the Fiscal Policy Agency, NDA of Indonesia, and my brother, Pa Usman, Director of Counter-Programming Division of GCF, set the tone today in terms of what we expect to achieve and how we can achieve moving forward. A big thank to the presenters, the moderators, and also colleagues who joined. Let me take a few minutes to probably expand a little bit on a few specific points here. I think Indonesia team and in NDA, I think it's repetition doesn't hurt to thank you again for and all the participants for this knowledge exchange. My really gratitude goes to the NDA team and my GGI colleagues in Indonesia for organizing this knowledge sharing session, which I hope has brought insightful perspective and knowledge to all the participants. In the keynote speech, Pa Usman has provided a strong foundation of NDA GCF knowledge exchange session today. While I believe that every NDA has been aware already of the importance of country ownership principle for GCF mechanism, the keynote remarks highlighted the expectation from GCF to NDA's implementation for country ownership principle and building strong programs that help to advance the climate ambitions of our respective countries. Further explanation on the current accreditation profile, the priorities available for support, and best practices both in terms of accreditation process and robust project pipelines development would definitely benefit not only the NDAs, but also the participating direct access entities. The Q&A session that Pa Usman took for about 10 minutes helped to go into more details on those specific aspects. Our presenters also gave us the opportunity to learn, to see the evidence-based, the best practices based on the lesson learned from their experiences nominating national entities, DAEs, as well as the accreditation process and the development of the pipeline for the DAEs. In the case of Indonesia, PNG, Papua New Guinea, Mongolia, and Uganda. During the discussions, very lively discussions, we were able to have more details provided in terms of some of the interesting perspectives that I was noting down and ways to improve how NDA's processes based on the best practices as well as tangible follow-up activities and actions for each NDA. Well, if I take a few minutes, let me also touch on another important aspect on lesson learned and best practices discussed today. And I think they were very well summarized. Indonesia, as the organizer, will hopefully you will all be receiving that summary into a mini report on the learning points that took place today. And these will be shared among the participants as well as be made available online on the NDA GCF Indonesia website. As I said earlier, knowledge sharing is a process, is also an outcome. It's a powerful tool. So having the knowledge available, accessible, but more importantly, the knowledge being used to improve on what we are doing is an important aspect. We also hope that the knowledge sharing that we started today does not end with this meeting. From our discussions, from your presentations, and from the Q&A, what we have seen is that there is a strong potential for collaboration among the NDAs and the DAEs, as well as establishing a network to support enhancing each country readiness and accessing GCF, as well as other climate finance. All of you are, I'm sure, familiar with GCF. GCF has been established as a partnership-based institution. And what we have done today through this knowledge sharing with different parts of different countries coming together, different stakeholders coming together, is actually demonstrating that partnership-based spirit by sharing knowledge and promoting joint learning and helping to scale up and speed up the delivery of the results. Through the knowledge sharing, what I would add finally is that through the knowledge sharing session today, I hope and I strongly believe that participating NDAs and DAEs have a selection of new potential tools in the climate finance arsenal. The new knowledge, the new approaches, the lesson learned will all fit into your processes, into your approach of constantly improving, consistently improving for all of us to make sure that what we do and how we do is built into a process of being a learning organization, being a learning entity that I hope will guide us into delivering what we have as current commitments, but also working on future commitments. So I want to end by with a hope that receiving this knowledge sharing and lesson learned will help us get much closer to delivering on our commitments and also helping GCF meeting its expectation. I do hope, and I hope all of you will share that hope as well, that this event has been beneficial and will be beneficial to improving the access to climate finance in our efforts to supporting the achievements of our respective countries' ambitions and delivering on the climate action commitments. I want to thank you very much again for giving me the opportunity to learn today. I learned a lot, as always, and that's always a fantastic thing to have when you join an event like this with experts from different parts of the world joining together and sharing lessons from Uganda to Papua New Guinea to Mongolia and to Indonesia. So thank you for giving us this opportunity. Thank you for all the good work we have been doing so far. And more importantly, thank you for continuing the great work for making the delivery of climate ambition a reality and supporting our countries in the implementation of what has been committed with GCF as a strong contribution to our country's climate actions and ambitions delivery. Thank you very much, everybody. And I hope this will open the door to many more of these events coming up that we will all enjoy together, and that the resources that will be available for those who didn't get the chance to join today, they will have an opportunity to access online and to be able to use it and adapt to their own context for the constant improvement of what we do and how we do it. Thank you very much again. And I wish you a very good morning, very good day, very good afternoon, depending on where we are. And I really want to thank you again for this strong collaboration with GGTI, and hope that we can take this collaboration to the next level with future upcoming knowledge sharing event. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Muhammadu. Yeah, indeed, hopefully the exchange of knowledge and practices amongst the countries can continue and enable a network of NDAs to support each other in strengthening their country programs and the administration and implementation of GCF programs. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before we close the event, we would like to take screenshots of our events today. So may I please ask you to kindly turn on your video so my colleague Ines can take the screen capture. Can we put the screen on a gallery view? And let's see your smiles by opening your video. Let's start with screen 1 in 3, 2, 1. And screen 2 in 3, 2, 1. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the NDA GCF Knowledge Exchange today. Hopefully, the event has provided you with insightful and useful information that can enhance the implementation of GCF mechanism in your country. Thank you for joining us today. I hope we can meet again in better circumstances. Sampai jumpa. Bayerte, lukim yubihen. Badaye. I hope I said that correctly. Stay healthy and stay safe. Terima kasih, and until next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you
very much. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. I hope I said that correctly.